literally one day I just woke up and said, hey, I'm going to email a company and see if they'll pay me money to just put a sponsor block in my newsletter. Like that was the business transition for me.
Welcome to the Personal Finance for PhDs podcast, a higher education in personal finance. I'm your host, Emily Roberts. This is Season 3, Episode 5, and today my guest is Dr. Chris Cloney, who started a research company based on his PhD research and now helps other PhDs launch businesses in their respective niches. Chris tells us his story of becoming an online entrepreneur twice over and how blogging about your research can help you with your career even if you don't turn it into a business. Chris has been on an incredible path, and this interview will really help PhDs think outside the box with respect to their employment options. Without further ado, here's my interview with Dr. Chris Cloney. I have with me today Dr. Chris Cloney he has two businesses, from Dust Safety Science and from Gradblogger. And I know Chris from an online community called Self-Employed PhD, which is part of Beyond the Professoriate. And in that community, Chris is it's obvious he's very, very intentional about his businesses and the way he has approached them and set them up. And he is also incredibly generous with his expertise in talking to the rest of us, helping us, giving us resources. And so I'm hoping both of those elements are going to come through today as we talk about him launching, eventually two businesses coming out of his PhD. So Chris, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And would you please introduce yourself a little bit further?
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. I'm really excited to be here on the Personal Finance for PhDs podcast. As you kind of mentioned, we've known each other for probably close to 2 years now through those communities, or at least a year and a half. And I'm really excited. I've been listening to this podcast for a while, and I'm excited to be on and kind of share my background with the listeners. So for background wise, I did my undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering here in Halifax in Nova Scotia, which is on the eastern coast of Canada. For those of you that think Canada's just one big province. I did my PhD in chemical engineering and applied science. That was the name of the department I was in. I actually did it in industrial safety, which would be a subset of process engineering, which would be a subset of chemical engineering. It's really how we make the things that we have around us. So these computers, these microphones, industrial engineering really looks at how do we have the processes to do that. During grad school, so I finished my undergrad in 2011 when I started my master's. I started working full-time with an engineering company or almost full-time. I did that for 5 years from 2011 to 2016. And in 2016, I left that job because it became obvious that I wasn't actually going to get what eventually was a PhD degree. I transitioned in 2013 from the master's to the PhD, and it was going to take me like 10 years. So I left that job to focus full-time on getting my PhD. And that kind of led down the road to a couple different things, which I'm sure we'll get into in this podcast. That's my kind of background in a nutshell. Is there anything I can expand on with any of that?
Yeah, just briefly, I was wondering, what was your plan all along? Like at some point, as we'll talk about, you decided to launch a business, but when you, for instance, left your job, was your plan still to return to that job or a similar job?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've always been a big kind of personal development geek. I've also been a personal finance geek for a long time too. So that's why I like your podcast. So I was always trying to get ahead. I thought I was a pretty good employee in the sense that I was there long hours and weekends and kind of really worked pretty hard and put a lot of thought into it. And then had some difficulties there as things got really busy and oil and gas impacted my company. But when I left, I was actually switching. So my company I was with before was we'll call it kind of a military resources company, looking at ship design and gear design for troops and things like that, all focused around this area of explosion, which I'm sure we'll get into, which is my thesis topic. I wanted to transition into industrial safety. So I kind of had enough of the military side and wanted to do that transition. So when I left, that was the really only intentional thing, was that I knew I wanted to switch careers. And I also knew that I had a bent for entrepreneurship. but I didn't know exactly how that might manifest itself. And then we kind of ended up where we went today. But I guess in terms of intentionality, those are the two things. I want to switch my career path. And I knew I wanted to do something on entrepreneurship. I actually saved some money, thinking about buying a rental property. And that was kind of be my foyer into that. But in terms of plans, that was about it.
Gotcha. Okay, I want to jump forward now to the present day. And can you just give us a brief overview of what your primary business, Dust Safety Science, is right now?
Sure. So Dust Safety Science, as I mentioned, my thesis degree was in industrial safety, specifically fire and explosion safety in these industries. So it's even more niche than that in the sense that I only deal with solid particle fires and explosions. So if you look at this MacBook Air that's probably sitting on your desk, it's got this really nice fine aluminum polish to it. When you do that, it creates literally tons, because they're making hundreds of these a day in a factory, tons of this aluminum dust. If that's not handled properly and the proper regulations are followed, that can become a fire and explosion hazard. So that was my thesis topic. I started blogging in that area at mydustexplosionresearch.com originally. And after a couple of years, we switched that to dustsafetyscience.com because it's a little bit easier to say. So that was kind of the genesis of how we got to dustsafetyscience.com. And that was sort of a 3-year period. So what we do today, it's an online business, and we have 4 key pillars. One is awareness. So a lot of sciences and a lot of even other graduate degrees have this issue. People aren't aware that what you're doing is actually important. In my case, we're trying to stop people from being injured, sometimes fatally injured. And that awareness is a big piece of what I do. Education, so putting out material explaining how to prevent these from happening. That's a big piece. Connection, so connecting researchers to researchers, researchers with industry, industry to service and equipment providers. And then change is the 4th pillar. So our goal is 0 fatalities, have a year with 0 fatalities over the next 20 years. We do that by advocating at an industrial level, at a government level, with countries around the world, explaining the hazards, trying to get better processes and safety put in place. So that seems like a really big thing, and it is kind of a really big thing, I guess, but that's where my business is today. We have those 4 pillars through dustsafetyscience.com.
And tell me about the structure of your business. So there's you, but I also know that you have a team.
Sure. So, it started with just me, and a lot of people that do online business are going to start that way. We have our website, our platform that bring people back to. We have an incident database, which is like our research machine. So we track every fire and explosion in these industries around the world, everyone we can find anyway, and report on them. And that's how we create material as a research company to publish on and present on at conferences. We have newsletters, reports. We do independent research. I have a podcast, Dust Safety Science Podcast, where I bring on experts from around the world. So those are the different parts of what a personal brand platform might look like for a research company. And then, in terms of structure behind that, I have myself now. I brought on my first help in 2017. It was 2 hours a week or 1 hour a week. Somebody's coming in and just helping me find articles and summarizing them and stuff like that. And now the team today, so fast forward 2 years, there's a lot of members. I'd say there's 4 core team members. We have a content manager. We have the same research VA, research virtual assistant, that started with me in 2017. We have a technical writer, a technical analyst, and we have people helping us with design, website design, that sort of stuff. So for me, it's been a big transition from solo, gritty, doing everything myself, trying to learn branding, trying to learn marketing, trying to learn design, trying to learn blogging, and now trying to manage a team to be able to move that forward. With our incident database, we actually do around 500 blog posts a year. So if you do the math, you can kind of see it's around 10 a week. And that requires a pretty good, healthy structure in the background to run that kind of research business.
So the reason I'm asking you a little bit about this is because as a fellow online entrepreneur, I know plenty about what your day-to-day like sort of looks like working virtually and everything. But I don't think that structure is going to be very familiar to the listeners who maybe have never even thought about being self-employed or launching a business based out of their PhDs. So I just wanted to get some clarity on that for them, like that you work from home, right? And your team members are not based anywhere near you, and you guys meet virtually and they work fairly independently, right?
Yeah, it's a crazy world, and you sometimes when you're so deep in it, you don't even realize that it might be so foreign to other people, and then you talk to like your mother or something, and like, oh yeah, this isn't normal for most people. So yes, I work from home. My businesses are my sole source of income. My son is sleeping in the room beside us. I hope he doesn't wake up. He's only 7 months old. My wife is on mat leave right now. She's going back work in a few months. And this office didn't used to look like this. Before I had a team, there was 3 whiteboards back there and, mind maps all over the place, and just trying to figure out life and business and how that all works.
Yeah, I miss your whiteboards. I find them very inspiring.
Yeah, if you go back, we have some Facebook groups and stuff, and I used to do live videos and things, and the office has changed dramatically. But I was starting to feel crushed by the amount of information I had just in one place. So actually this Christmas I read the bullet journal, Ryder Carroll, I think is the name, Bullet Journal Strategy or something's the book. And I managed to combine that all into this one book, plus have the team and online systems. And now my office, I actually have a coach that you can sit on instead of stacks and stacks of paper.
So I want to take a couple steps back to when you were still in graduate school, and the idea has come to you. Well, I guess you said you started by blogging, right? So a lot of people blog or create content in some manner about their research, and that's something that you're now helping people with. But you're starting from a blog, and yet that turned into this like highly structured business, and you have employees or contractors or whatever. How were a couple of those transition steps? Like when you started blogging, okay, that's sort of accessible to people. What happened after that? Why did the blog turn into this whole business?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I've talked about this quite a bit in lots of formats, that this kind of personal brand, building an online business, being seen as the expert in an area is actually quite, I don't know the right word, but it's quite available to people that have higher degrees, because the first thing you see on online marketing or digital marketing is you need to niche down really far, find an audience that is really small and cares about what you do a lot. And that's like the definition of your thesis research. 6 people are going to read your thesis, 3 might care. And that's it. But, so that's what I did. I was blogging exactly about my PhD research. It turns out that the researchers that I was blogging to didn't care. They weren't online, but I started really niche like that. And then some people started to find it and say, hey, this is kind of interesting. And it ended up being the industry that was relying on the information from this research. So I expanded a little bit into that and started making content for them. And, after 6 or 9 months of doing that, I realized that I had this kind of platform built up. I had this personal brand. People were inviting me to speak on the topic. I was beginning to be seen as the sort of expert. And I quickly realized that, well, rewinding back to job offers, like I got several. So just from blogging online about my topic, my goal was to switch careers, and that was a success. But by the time I got these job offers, I realized, hey, we have something here. I can really make a dent in my field and develop this independent research company. So I started to monetize that blog in a couple different ways. I can kind of go into that if that's something you think your audience might be interested in.
Why don't you just mention what they are? Because I mean, they can find your resources and dive into this plenty more. But yeah, just how do you make money?
So ask people for money, step 1. No, but in all seriousness, so I had a newsletter, had 250 people on it. And the first time I made any money online, I just emailed a company and said, would you like to put your logo and I call a sponsor block, but a short description of your company in that newsletter? The newsletter is now up to 15 or 1,600 people. But every month we take on a new sponsor that goes in that newsletter. So I literally just emailed the company directly and asked them. I said, will you pay $200 a month to have this in this newsletter? It goes out 4 times a month. And they emailed me back. It's actually kind of a funny story because I sent the email and I had like a nice landing page I spent all this time creating. And if you're on the online space, you know that you need to do all this fancy stuff. I sent the email and said, check out the details here. And the guys emailed me back very quick and said, oh, we'll do it. And I realized I didn't put in the email that I had a charge, like if there's any fee. So I hummed and hawed for half an hour before emailing back and be like, and there's a fee, it's $200 a month. And he said, of course there is, here's my marketing manager. She said within another 10 minutes that they'd take a year of sponsorship at $200 a month. And I was just like, no, you can't do that because obviously the price was too low. So I did 3 months with them and we've increased it steadily over time. I like to share that story. It's up to about $600 a month now, just for that one sponsor block. I like to share that story because it's a good point of getting started. If you have an audience, it doesn't have to be really big. Mine was only 250 people in my newsletter. But there's ways you can start to monetize that. So we do advertising on reports now. We do advertising on just on the website. We have member companies. So if you are looking for a piece of equipment specific to explosion prevention, if you land on my website, you'll find it'll take you down the path to here's the 5 providers in your area or the 5 providers in the world and the one that's in your area. And those are all member companies of what we call our industrial directory or industry directory. So a lot of it's been direct advertising. We are working on courses for underserved portions of my audience. So this would be firefighters. Researchers tend to be pretty underserved as well. And other kind of groups like that people in my industry don't really care about creating material for, but they're really needing it because firefighters go in, especially volunteer firefighters. They may see a silo fire and go and start spraying water on it and disturb the dust in the air. And unfortunately, it kills a number of firefighters every year. So we're trying to create, how can we do better awareness, better educational material to serve some of these underserved groups? So courses, and then, there's the kind of typical consulting, presenting, speaking, which I dabble into a bit. We'll do more in the future. But those are some of the ways that you can kind of start to make money. But for me, it's about becoming the first, the single biggest resource or the biggest source of information in your industry. And then all of these things start becoming available.
I see that a little bit parallel in my own story, actually. I mean, the business that I've developed is structured quite differently from yours, but it did start with me niching down and to serving PhDs with their money, and then being seen as the expert eventually over time, by virtue, I think, of the fact that I am the sole person who does this on a large scale. And just sticking with it, I think, over time and continuing to produce content and serve people. This summer, I'm putting forth extra support for PhDs undergoing career transitions into grad school, a postdoc, or a real job. If you're moving on to the next stage in your career or thinking about it, please visit pfforphds.com/next to check out my articles, webinars, and coaching program. Allow me to come alongside you during this transition to ensure that you set yourself up for financial success. Why now? Okay, so let's transition a little bit, because in addition to Dust Safety Science, you have another business, which is Gradblogger. And in this, you're sort of, I would say, an evangelist for people, for PhDs creating their own businesses, starting with blogging. So you eventually want to take them down a similar path to what you went down. So why do you think that this is something that launching a business out of your PhD research? Why do you think this is something that current graduate students or current postdocs or current PhDs should be considering?
Well, we start by why people don't consider it, because it's kind of scary. So people don't like the thought of putting themselves out there. But why they should consider it is because it really is an endless stream of information, an endless way to do it. So it really builds your reputation in your space. It can and will lead to job offers if that's what you're looking for, if you want to transition or have better job security when you get out. Just the number of contacts after blogging for 6 months in my field, doing things like bringing on guest posts. So I let experts in my field from industry post on my website. We had I did it while I was writing my thesis, actually. So we had maybe 24 guest posts comes on. Each one of those guest posters was like the president of a company, or a high level engineering technical person at that company. And each company really liked what we were doing. We started guest posting. We got job offers. I got job offers from a lot of them. So it can lead to job offers. That's what you're interested in doing. Then it can and does lead to these other opportunities. Just like you were saying, you built your business by putting out content and becoming seen as an expert. And then people started calling you saying, hey, can you do speaking? Can you do workshops? For myself, advertising is an option if somebody else wants access to your audience, in sort of a non-sleazy way. Like, I want the people that come to my website to go to these equipment and service providers, because it's going to save people's lives to install the correct equipment. And I'll tell them if they don't need safety equipment installed, then I'll say, this is the way you figure out if you need it. If you don't need it, then don't, waste the money. But if you do need it, please go talk to these experts and get the material you need to protect your workers. So those are a couple of things of why I think they should start. So yeah, build your reputation. It can and will lead to job offers. And if you do have an entrepreneurial spirit, or you want to figure that out, like when I started, I tried to start this big startup mentality, and I had a business idea about ticket swapping at my local arena. I had a business idea about gluten-free subscription service. It was like, oh, how do I get funding? How do I get money? How do I do the startup thing? And it's like this really big thing. But if you start this really slow process of putting out content, becoming seen as an expert through sharing on social media, it's like way slower and way easier than taking, $20,000 from somebody and being worried about how you're going to make that return on investment. Literally one day I just woke up and said, hey, I'm going to email a company and see if they'll pay me money to just put a sponsor block in my newsletter. Like, that was the business transition for me. But it's because of the front end work, building this kind of, business based around my research, or even blogging and putting myself out there.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up kind of the startup thing as a route that you didn't go, because so my background is in biomedical engineering. And so in that, and in biotech in general, like, I see startups. Like, my husband works at a biotech startup. So I'm a little bit more familiar with that model. But this idea of being an online entrepreneur, a solopreneur at first, is just totally different than that when we're talking about PhD work. And so are there any other business models that you can think of that might be accessible for PhDs, aside from the startup route and aside from more like what you do, research company, as you call it? Are there any other models out there that you're aware of?
Yeah, I mean, they're endless, really. So the first one you're going to get all the time is consulting. And like, my dad still says, are you a consultant? And I say, well, no, I don't do consulting.
I get that all the time too. Oh, you're a financial consultant. Kind of, sometimes.
Sort of, but I mean, for me, my clients are actually consultants. So a lot of time, if you need the next level, I do awareness education. If you need somebody to come into your facility, then I hand you to our member companies who are consultants. But you can be a consultant. People do that. And I could do that right now. And it's pretty lucrative. It would mean that I'd have to travel a lot more than I do today. But you can make a lot of money being an academic consultant. You see a lot of, we'll call them traditional PhDs or traditional tenured professors do this road eventually in their career as well. But you could probably do a lot quicker if you try to build this personal brand out. Consulting, speaking, some like kind of, I want to say low level, but not in a sense of these are any less worthwhile, but like just editing, freelance writing. These are all tracks that are available as you get better in the space to, rely on skills you already have. Editing resumes for people. You could go on Upwork right now and put a profile up and start doing that and making some money. And yeah, there's a lot of these different, building courses over long-term, building evergreen courses, building pre-launch courses, beta courses. Course seems to be the big thing online right now. There's all these different ways. I actually thought when I started that what I did was the minority, like the slow kind of build up. The more people I talk to, when I first talk to them, they say, oh yeah, that is kind of different. But then if you talk to them enough, like you were saying, well, that's kind of how you got started into speaking, was you're blogging, you're putting out content, you get seen as the expert, and you went on from there. If you think of other people in our space that maybe seem like it's different than what I'm doing, it is kind of quite similar, I think. But it's just that once you put this into the world, as you work on being seen as the biggest single best source of information, if you can become somebody's favorite. So in my case, people from industry really like what I'm doing. They're my super fans, if you will. They'll support you in your work, and then you can just go on to be able to monetize that in different ways.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I do think, yeah, that's especially the consulting route is another model that at least I saw within academia, as you were saying, that even some professors there could be 80% at the university doing their primary job and 20% off consulting and making a lot better pay rate doing that.
That's right.
So let's conclude by talking a little bit more about Gradblogger specifically. So it's now a newer business, a second business that you've launched that I know you're spending a very significant amount of your time on. And what is Gradblogger? I mean, you have a website, you have a podcast. What else do you have going on, and what are you talking about there?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it started as a platform for me to share my story. Just so I thought it was important to get out there. This whole building an independent research company, being able to make change in the world. The big things that were happening to me, like talking to government organizations, getting invited to sit on, boards of research projects. Like I'm sitting on a board with the Research Institution of Sweden, talking with U.S. government groups, talking with groups out of Africa and China on their dust pollution areas. So it's just kind of a neat, interesting thing, being able to work from home, being able to see my son grow up. It's part sharing my story, but then the other part, and I mean, our tagline is helping PhDs build online businesses so they can change the world with their research and experience. But I really had this view that I can help create or play a role in creating these superstar academics who are making change on a really big level in their fields. Becoming independent researchers, not being tied to a university. Like I could hire a graduate student or fund a graduate student right now. And that's one of our goals, is to fund at least one master student in this year. He or she will be involved at the university, but we'll help fund them through dust safety science. But I get to make that decision because I'm an independent research company. I call it kind of being self-tenured. So I have a funding budget for research. And it's kind of this really interesting thing where I talk to people that try so hard to become tenured, and it's such a hard process. But if you can build a business that can sustain your life behind that, then any excess can go into building your own kind of research company. So that's what I want to do. I want to help create these superstar academics that are changing the world. How we do that, I mean, you mentioned we have the podcast, we put out blog posts. I do one-on-one coaching. We've done a little bit of group coaching. But it's really sharing my story, sharing the things I've learned. I've listened to just Smart Passive Income podcast alone. I've listened to over 150 hours, and I've listened to other podcasts at the same time. So I'm probably into 400, 500 hours of podcast listening. I take that knowledge and try to distill it down into, here's what it means for an academic trying to build a business through blogging, podcasting, and video.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I've really benefited from your vast taking in of information and being able to distill it and make recommendations. And so I would definitely recommend anyone who is even having an inkling of an idea that they might want to blog or might want to start a podcast or eventually start a business, go check out Gradblogger, because, Chris has amazing resources there and he makes himself very available too, which is awesome.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And last question is, what do you have any advice for a PhD in that position, interested in starting to become seen as an expert in his or her area outside of academia, being seen by a wider community as an expert, and even potentially starting a business? What's your advice for that person?
Yeah, I'll give a couple different things. I was trying to think of the right way to answer this, because I could say, follow step 1, 2, 3, create a blog, create a podcast, do video, and you're done or something. That's probably not that helpful to somebody that's tuning into this podcast. Maybe doesn't care about blogging or online business. So I try to take a step back from that. A couple different things. If you're interested in trying to do something, like getting started now is a big thing, and to try different things, be exposed to different, different things. Like if you're interested in startup culture, go join a startup community group or a meetup or something. So that's my really high level, not that useful of a tactical thing, but something that's important to think about. For people in your group, I'd take an accounting class. It was very hard for me to take an accounting class as a chemical engineering graduate student, but I did. I asked my supervisor. He said, "I don't know why you'd want to do that, but okay, sure." I tried at my university. They wouldn't let me in to accounting because I wasn't an MBA student. I had to go to an adjacent university and join their accounting class and then get that set up so it accounted credits for my university. But I learned so much about just reading financial statements, understanding, business acumen, sense of profit, income statements, balance sheets, just from taking that one class. That's something that's going to help you, if you're starting a career or if you're doing your own business. And then the big one that I want to leave people off with, and it's helped me a lot, and again, it will help you whether or not you're starting an online business, is just think about creating this, I call a virtual mentor or a virtual mastermind group. So I had this idea from the book Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill. Basically, he says you need to create a mastermind group of people that you can ask when you're stuck, when you don't know what to do. And this, for him, was a physical group. Today, you can join 1,000 different mastermind groups. Just type in mastermind group for X, and you'll get lots of people that may want to take your money and let you into their fancy group. But I actually like to think of it as a virtual group. So I pick people that have already done what I want to do, and I learn everything I can about them. And then I think whenever I have a question about what to do next, I just think about that person and say, okay, well, in my case, I did a lot with Pat Flynn. I listen to Smart Passive Income, every podcast episode. And I think when I'm at this next step in my business, what would Pat tell me to do? Although I don't have a physical relationship with him, although I'm going to his event this year, which is kind of sweet. After, I guess, thinking of in my head for 3 years and being my virtual mentor. But it's a great way to do it. And if you're going to do it like somebody has a podcast, don't start with their podcast today. Like if you went to listen to Smart Passive Income, it's pretty commercial today. It's not very tractable for people that are just getting started. Go to their first episode because you're going to learn stuff from them. And another, there's Smart Passive Income. Amy Porterfield's podcast is for online business, one that people really resonate with. It doesn't have to be online business, but whoever did, if they're an engineer, if they're a historian or whatever it is that they've done what you want to do, go learn as much as you can. Make them your virtual mentor or real mentor, I guess, if you got the money to do that. And just think about what would they tell you to do in the next steps? So that's why I contribute so much in these groups, because that's, what Pat does in his world. He has this kind of serve person mentality. When he's scared to do something, he says it's a good sign. So go ahead and do it. That's why I've launched 2 podcasts now and keep putting myself out there. So that's what I leave people with as advice, this sort of virtual mentor idea, or join a mastermind or get a real mentor too, or a real coach. That's all really helpful. But if that seems like it's far away, because it did when I started, just learning about somebody and trying to do this virtual mentor is a great way to do it.
Yeah, I would, to take a step even further up,
Please.
I would kind of summarize all those things as like, not necessarily, it's sort of networking, but it's just about more like exposure for you as a graduate student or as a postdoc, early career PhD, just being exposed to more ideas and more different ways that people do things. We can get so siloed and stuck inside our research and inside our university and inside the one way of doing things. That is just so amazing when you can kind of finally open the door and say, oh my gosh, there's a whole other world out here of possibilities and people to learn from and everything. So I really appreciate that advice. And of course, you coming on the podcast and sharing your journey and your expertise with us today. So thank you so much, Chris.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I really appreciate coming on. And like I said, I've been a listener for a long time and follow your work for a long time. So it's a pleasure and, an honor really to be on and talk to you.
Oh, thank you. Listeners, I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode. pfforphds.com/podcast is the hub for the Personal Finance for PhDs podcast. There, you can find links to all the episode show notes, a form to volunteer to be interviewed, a survey, and a way to join the mailing list. I'd love for you to check it out and get more involved. See you in the next episode. The music is Stages of Awakening by Poddington Bear from the Free Music Archive and is shared under CC by NC. Podcast editing and show notes creation by Jewel Lips.